Good evening and welcome to the Territories Talk 2023 season. I am co-host Shayna Smith Archer. With me tonight I have Thomas Christopher Famous. He has all his government names up. He doesn't sound like himself, so if you're tuned in via our radio media partners, his voice will sound different, but it is Chris. So Chris, Happy New Year, because we're back. This is the first for the year. We took a very long, luxurious Christmas break.
Yeah, well-deserved break.
Oh boy, I tell you, last year was a beast. So, but because we enjoy what we do, we can't stay away. So we are back. So again, welcome and Happy New Year to all our regular viewers. And if you're a new viewer, welcome to the conversation.
Yes, welcome. Happy New Year to everyone. And it's not actually Happy New Year. Hey, Damian.
Good evening, everybody. My apologies for my tardiness. Unfortunately, couldn't be helped.
No problem. We're Caribbean. We understand what Caribbean time is.
He's in another time zone. He gets a
well, we're very much a being culture rather than a doing culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my apologies. I have a little flu myself, so my voice doesn't sound the same. So, but you're all going to be in great hands today. First, we want to thank our media partners, ZJB Radio in Montserrat, PJFE in Saba, Channel 82 in Bermuda, CBC in Barbados, CBN in the Virgin Islands, US and British Virgin Islands, Cayman Marl Road in Cayman Islands, and Radio Turks and Caicos in, you guessed it, Turks and Caicos Island. So first we'll introduce our guests who aren't strangers to this show. You do it in alphabetical order. Well, they both got D names, so.
Yeah.
We got Dwayne Robinson, JP, returning from Bermuda.
Yeah. Good evening, all. Thank you.
And we have Mr. Damian Wilson from Turks and Caicos Island, Radio Turks and Caicos.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Just wondering which island you was in tonight.
I'm in Grand Turks.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, and of course, my lovely cousin, co-host, Shayna M. Smith Archer, all her government names. Well, I don't know what her middle name is, but she's from the Republic of Frenchman's Key, which is located in the Virgin Islands.
Yes. You have it all correct there. That's my address. That's where you send my Bermuda cake.
Yes. So as this is our first show for the year, what we're gonna do is having a regional roundup so we could catch up on some of the stuff that's been happening in the region since November when we had our last show. Mm-hmm. So I'll let Dwayne start off.
Well, I hope it's in order. We'll see what comes up first. This might be yours, Chris.
Okay. Over in our sister island of Anguilla, they were last week or 2 weeks ago, they were able to open a brand new ferry terminal, Blowing Point, which can serve Anguilla, the transit between Anguilla and the neighboring island that you see in the background, St. Martin, or French St. Martin and also Dutch St. Martin.
Okay. And we're trying to get one down here across from the Republic of Frenchman's Key. So I'm really interested in seeing what that looks like in terms of its layout. Because we demolished our ferry terminal. It got severely damaged after Hurricane Irma, and we still have to rebuild it.
In our sister island of St. Eustatius, which is a Dutch island, they have an upcoming general election. So what you see here is their situation is slightly different than British Islands, but this is one party, the Progressive Labour Party. These are their candidates. The lady in the orange is Rachel Leaderdam. The lady in the orange holding the folder is Rachel Leaderdam. She's actually the leader of the PLP.
Oh, okay.
And in our sister island, Turks and Caicos Island,
Ooh,
earlier this year, Damian, I guess Damian's going to elaborate on a bit more. They have an ongoing challenge with refugees from Haiti.
I wish that was the only issue.
Right.
Wow.
I'll let you elaborate more.
I mean, right now, Turks and Caicos in terms of the whole illegal migration situation with immigrants from Haiti, it's I think it's reached a kind of a peak. Um, Last I checked, I think we were at more than 400 persons repatriated just for the new year.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, we're with as Haiti gets worse, illegal migration and TCI increases. Um, Thankfully, we've been very good in the last 2 years at interception. We've gotten
Mhm.
extremely good at interception. However, that is now a cost to the government because the more people we intercept, the more people we have to repatriate. So it is now a financial cost, and that is causing a huge uproar. And of course, that then causes friction between the local community and the Haitian community because we do have a large Haitian population. I mean, more than 50% of our population is of Haitian descent, and so that creates a huge issue. We've had even police officers caught harboring illegal immigrants from Haiti, and so it's a saga that's really out of hand at the moment. And it's one of the big issues, and I think it's a defining issue of this government because the last three elections, every government came into office with the promise of solving illegal immigration, and nobody seems to be able to solve the issue.
So, what, in your opinion, what is the or one of the solutions?
Well, Chris, in all honesty, we can't solve or we can't stop persons from leaving Haiti, and I've said this in numerous chat groups. I've said this to numerous politicians. We have to admit that we can't stop persons leaving Haiti because that's beyond our control. That has to do with on the ground factors in Haiti. The issue is what makes us so attractive. Porous borders, easy employment, and persons willing to hide illegal immigrants. This is our problem, and we have to solve those three key pull factors because people have to understand there will always be push and pull factors in illegal migration and legal migration. But if the pull factors that pull people towards you are greater, then you're always going to have people coming towards you. It's just easier to come to Turks and Caicos than it is to say go to the Bahamas, even though the Bahamas now has seen increased illegal immigration, and they're going through the whole issue where you have Haitian representatives in the U.S. of Haitian descent are now asking Americans to boycott the Bahamas because the Bahamas has undertaken increased deportation of persons living in the Bahamas of Haitian descent. So this is an issue for the TCI in the Bahamas that we've dealt with for years. The Bahamas also has a huge locally based Haitian immigrant population, just like the TCI. We rely on the cheap labor, just like the Bahamas. I mean, the Bahamian Contractors Association has come out and said that if the Bahamian government deports all illegal immigrants, the construction industry would sink, basically. And so it's you here you have the head of a major labor union saying, "Listen, we need illegal immigrants." And that doesn't bode well for the government's efforts to deport them. It's a serious problem that I think really needs addressing. If we're going to, in order for us to address the illegal immigration situation, we need the entire Caribbean. We need CARICOM to actually function the way it's meant to function in order to address the situation in Haiti, because that's the only way you're going to stop illegal immigration from Haiti is by fixing the problems in Haiti, and that is not an easy fix, right? The international community has been attempting it for years. personally, I think a lot of it has been wrong. I think a lot of it has actually been driven by self-interest within developed nations and not really the interest of the Haitian people to begin with. But there's a lot of issues there to unpack. It's not a simple overnight fix. For the time being, I guess the creation of a kind of virtual border wall, as Trump would call it, is the only way for you to go. But then again, that places huge strain on government resources because you now look at manpower, which this government is now discussing, creating a border force and supplying the manpower there. And once you have the manpower, you now need resources, right? So you now need persons to go out on the water, to spend time on the water. Then you're looking at other resources like food and boats and supplies and all these other secondary things. I mean, aside from detention, and the other key issue in Turks and Caicos is that our own immigration stats say that the majority of deportees are not persons who actually come in illegally. Ironically, it's overstayers.
Mm.
And so you now need boots on the ground to actually make spot checks.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things, just observation, is that, I mean, it's kind of interesting to hear what the Bahamians had to say. Well, the contractors, let me put it that way. One of the things that I find interesting is that, like, in Turks and Caicos, from my observation, there's what you call shanty towns, right? Where more than likely these are illegal persons living there. And the question is, well, when is the government going to act on it?
I mean, Chris, the problem we've had, right, is that for years, for decades now, we've had a relationship with Haiti and the Dominican Republic where most of our produce over the decades, especially when I was a kid, that's where we got most of our fresh produce from. So we've had a long established trade relationship with Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And we've had persons within our industries, housekeeping, tourism, the construction industry, that have come from those countries traditionally, and those jobs are actually looked at traditionally as immigrant jobs. And so you do have this situation where we've kind of created it, by being so lax with enforcing policy and legislation over the years that we've now shot ourselves in the foot. We've allowed it. Actually, it's kind of a running joke between us and Bahamians that our politicians approve citizenship for a number of these people simply for votes, right? And we know it happens. And so now you have these people being a significant portion, and rather than saying these people, you have persons of Haitian descent being a significant portion of your legal population that are now sympathetic to the plight of their brothers and sisters in Haiti. And that is something you can't ignore. That's a situation we've created, and so that allows for persons to be attracted here because they know they're going to find safe harbor. When you have law enforcement officers themselves who are responsible for enforcing the law being arrested for harboring illegal immigrants, that tells you that you're in a serious problem.
Okay, I guess we'll get back to that. Thank you for that. Over to you now, Dwayne, with updates from Bermuda.
Yes. So just recently we had an island-wide power outage, which obviously was very, very inconvenient for the people who were commuting. I know myself, I had to race to the nursery to pick up my son because, no power, and parents said no stoplights and none of that. So it was very concerning for many. And I believe it's the second one in 2 years. So it's started to bring up a lot of questions about, how secure is our one power plant on the island, and whether or not we should be looking into that. And I know that Balco has come forward and said that they would release, a report on what happened. But for many of us, it's still very much like we would like to know a bit more. So I have a lot of respect for folks who work at Belco, and I know it's hard work. So I don't want it to come across as though folks who are working there, are the issue. But it's definitely concerning when your one power plant on the island is having island-wide power outages, and it could happen at any time. Like that one was during broad daylight, and became quite a hassle during peak traffic, especially for people who are coming home from work or commuting to pick up their children or making the night shift. So definitely something that our government has been vocal about, and so is the opposition. So I believe that we should get one topic that we actually all might agree on.
Well, I would say this, and I say this from a technical point of view, right? That if you are, let's say, for example, you work at a hotel and you're serving your guests, and something happens to your stove and you can't cook the food, that is no fault of the employee. It's a technical issue where something happened unexpectedly, right? And if you ever heard the term million moving parts? At Belco or any power station, there's 3 million moving parts. So at any given time, something will go wrong. I mean, we're not saying that justifying an outage, but just bear in mind that there's no employee that caused it, number one. And these are technical issues that just happen. I mean, I know I'm not trying to make light of it, just saying that we should stay away, not you and I, but others should stay away from the sort of finger pointing and conspiracy theories, because it's far from that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it's compounded by obviously the cost of living, and people are saying, well, if I pay a certain amount, I should get a certain level of security. So I do think that is a portion of it, and also the fact that it, as we all know, we have to call a spade a spade. The president of of the company is indeed a sitting government MP. So there's a lot of layers to it. As far as accountability.
You're conflating two things. Politics has nothing to do with a technical problem, like absolutely nothing.
No, but it's definitely something, again, that fuels public opinion. I mean, that's just how it goes. If it was anyone from a sitting MP, always draws more interest in a topic than just a regular citizen. That's just a fact.
All right, Dwayne, you in. You've been the internet tonight.
Yeah.
Yes, and the Bahamas, our sister island, close to Turks and Caicos, they'll be celebrating their 50th anniversary of independence this year in July. Ooh. So the slogan is "One Nation, Our Legacy, Our Future." Back to you, Dwayne.
Yes. Sorry, you broke up for a second. My bad.
No, and back to your next topic.
Oh, yes. So one of the major things that Bermuda has been grappling with is kind of repairing and revitalizing its tourism product. And I know this has been a cause for a lot of concern in the industry, because we haven't quite been able to get to our pre-pandemic numbers. And this has caused a lot of strife for the hospitality industry, especially when it comes to retention of staff. So as it is our second pillar of the economy, it's become national importance to, come together and rebuild this tourism product. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't help that, we've had the cancellation of the American Airlines Miami flight for the summer. So it's a lot of angst in that, as far as, Bermuda getting back to its pre-pandemic numbers, which is necessary to, fuel our economy and also to keep our hospitality, open and running. So, it's facing a few things. I mean, we have a few delays with Southampton Princess reopening, and we have, a few revolving resignations within the BTA leading up to this point. So Bermuda Tourism Authority and our biggest hotel are not quite open. So we now see, the Hotel Association, the interim CEO of the BTA, and the Minister of Tourism kind of pooling their resources together to try and see how we can tackle getting these air arrivals and tourism numbers back to where they were.
Okay, thank you. Next one, Dwayne.
Yeah, you just letting me go.
Yeah, I know you might have other responsibilities there.
Okay, this is the first.
Yeah. What team, Dwayne?
Manage one quick.
Yeah. So also in more political news, I think one of the most highly anticipated budgets will be delivered by Premier David Burt, Honorable David Burt, on the 17th of February. And the reason why I believe this one is very anticipated is because of the fact that Bermudians are indeed grappling with inflation, higher costs of living, and the budget is going to be kind of a source of support and relief for them. At least they hope to hear something that it relieves and aids in that. I will give the government credit, as I know my colleague has spoken on this before, but they did freeze gas prices, so that's one good part of it. But another thing to keep track of in this budget coming up is a proposed payroll tax change that was in the pre-budget, and whether or not that would make it to the final product. This particular proposed tax, payroll tax, was alarming for some members in insurance, which is our largest contributor to the economy. So it was alarming because it directly targeted those high earners, which I guess, depending on your ideology, could be good or bad. As far as for the economy, if you're targeting the industry that's growing and is the 60% of our GDP and economic activity, and you make it seem like they may not be able to make as much as, say, competitors down south who are tax-free, it could cause an issue. So it's a lot of things that Bermudians are looking forward to hearing and seeing in this budget, especially when in regards to the $3 billion of debt that we currently have, which is, well, I should say over $3 billion in debt. So, seeing how the government will target that inflation and whether or not this payroll tax goes through could necessarily be one of the defining moments of this term for the Progressive Labor Party.
So I have a question, because you piqued my interest with freezing of gas prices. So how does that work?
So I'm going to be completely honest. I remember the Premier made a statement on it where I believe he was indeed subsidizing it. But I think MP Chris Famous might have a bit more in-depth knowledge on that, but he did manage to freeze it, and I believe it was through subsidy.
Okay.
Well, to answer it real quick, what happens is every quarter, we have two gas companies, Rubis and Searle. They talk about price, increases price per liter, and the government said no increases because it's going to hurt the people's pocket. So as far as the subsidy, I can't answer to that, but that's technically how they freeze the prices. They didn't allow the gas.
Through the regulatory authority, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's similar to I think what's happening in Barbados. Because I remember the government was doing some type of subsidy over a certain amount to help give people relief. You were saying something, Damian?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, similar actions have been taken in Turks and Caicos, right? With gas and with electricity costs, where the government, they didn't freeze. I mean, there's several ways you could freeze prices. I wouldn't want to speculate in how they did it in Bermuda, but I know in TCI what the government did was basically remove their taxes from the cost of fuel. So in essence, it is a somewhat like a subsidy, but they just basically removed their taxes, allowing the cost of fuel to be strictly based on just the import cost and whatever the markup is for the suppliers. Now, with fuel, what government did with the not fuel with energy prices, what government did is that any energy cost above a certain level was subsidized by the government. So government actually subsidized a percentage of residential energy bills, but they did not do it for the commercial sector.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
we
I
had
think in
something
this
here.
case it was the regulatory just was declining the raise in prices. Now that it's jogging my memory, I believe that it's basically been put on the private sector to kind of bear that, so that it's no cost to government. So I don't want to get too up in the Royal Gazette tomorrow because I said government was spending money on on fuel.
Yeah. Well, I'm researching. I'm just curious because that's been like over the past year. Cost of living, inflation has really hit some astronomical levels. So, and we just pause here real quick to acknowledge our friend Ron Grant has joined us from the beautiful Virgin Islands.
Hello, Brother Ron.
Hi,
Happy
Nick
New
and
Year.
Woods.
Hey folks,
You
how
hear on?
you guys doing? Everybody's
Welcome.
good.
Yeah, we're good,
It seems like
man.
a lot of it seems like a lot of the issues we're facing are interconnected. We're not in this alone.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, Dwayne. Anything else on your notepad?
I think it's something else that I think the region might appreciate, and obviously that's the working population of Bermuda has taken a dive. The Minister of Economy and Labor has declared it to be unsustainable. We basically need approximately 8,400 workers to be infused back into the working population in order for the island to function. And obviously, that's another piece of the budget, which is, how is the government going to tackle? We've had a plan promised that should be over the next 5 years of trying to increase the working population. But I think, islands all around the world are kind of suffering from, that inflation and kind of being priced out. So obviously it's hard to compete when it comes to retaining workers and attracting workers to Bermuda. So, as being nonpartisan, I do understand that this would be tough for any government to tackle. Obviously, it's something that I think is regional right now. Not to let your colleagues off the hook, MP, but just to acknowledge that it is indeed a big burden, and I'm sure that the region again is sitting in that same boat.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Dwayne, can I ask a question? I mean, I'm curious, right? Because one of the issues that recently emerged in Turks and Caicos is this issue around immigrant labor, right? Not necessarily the illegal immigrant situation with Haitians, but around persons coming from overseas and living in the TCI, and now they've been here so long, working here, supplying our population, and now they're applying for status, and so it's become an issue of why should we give persons citizenship? And there are a lot of arguments on both sides for and against, because the Status Commission recently rejected nearly some 700 applications that have actually been out. They recently rejected nearly 700 applications. Out of 700 applications, around 700, I don't remember the exact figure, only 19 were approved, right? And so now some of those applicants have taken the government to court. Essentially, they've filed for the Supreme Court to have a judicial review of the commission's decision. And so it has raised issues about, the importation of labor into the country. particularly in senior management roles, because a lot of the persons that are suing the government are persons in those senior positions who've been here for quite a while. They've made their home here, and now saying, "Hey, you know what? I've paid my contribution to the Turks and Caicos. I should be allowed to stay here."
Yeah.
And so it's a real issue. So I'm just wondering, with the labor shortage in Bermuda, is that something that Bermuda is facing? And I might ask, and I'll ask the same question to everyone. Do you guys see similar situations where you are?
Yeah, I think for us, if we're being completely honest, immigration is probably the most combative topic in our politics, and actually is probably one of the defining lines between both parties. And I think that Bermuda's particular problem is that it's become very top heavy as far as where you can work to have a certain standard of living. Right now, when you have an industry that dominates 60% of the economic activity, but is not the majority employer, it creates a dichotomy between, being able to work in this particular industry, which is insurance or international business, and then you can get a work-life balance, you can get a high standard of pay, you can do all that, and then you have the larger section of the population that basically has to get into these even more shrinking workforce opportunities. So I think with immigration, the best bet would be to try to attract people that are looking to be employers, not necessarily workers, and hopefully find a balance between enticing Bermudians in the wider diaspora to return with job opportunities that are not limited to just a select few highly paid industries, and to actually get a standard of living in, let's say, hospitality or whatever, and providing those job opportunities. I think you can find a balance, because what you don't want to do is obviously swing the doors open and you have a huge influx of people, and now it's nowhere for your own people to return as far as Bermudians who, are from the place. So you have to find that balance. And I think that's unfortunately going to be very hard for this current government, because the situation is so critical that, how can you manage now versus time, when the time clock is ticking, right? Yeah. So you need 8,000 people, or the pension plans are going to collapse. All of this stuff is going to collapse. So you kind of got to pick up the pace. But, at the same time, there was some movement that was going to be made a few years ago, but that wasn't received. And now here we are 6 years later, trying to fix the problem relatively quickly.
No.
All right. We're going to just take a moment to acknowledge our media partners: ZJB Radio in Montserrat, CBN in the Virgin Islands, Channel 82 in Bermuda, Radio Turks and Caicos in Turks and Caicos Islands, CBC in Barbados, the
Saba, Radio Saba,
PJFE in Saba, and Cayman Marl in Cayman Islands. So over to you, Brother Ron. Thank you for joining us.
Well, again, it's always a pleasure to see you wonderful folks. As Dwayne was speaking, and it was almost like he was talking about the British Virgin Islands, and in some instances, a lot of the issues that we're facing, and I hear you guys talk about, are ones that we continue to face as well. Kicking off on the issue of immigration, we have had an extensive problem here in the Virgin Islands as it pertains to the labor and immigration mandates that would make it simple enough for not only employees seeking to hire, but employers and investment. We have a dire situation where persons of various demographics, it pretty much doesn't, at this point, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Hospitality seems to get the highest blow, but it's very difficult. It's become immensely difficult to get persons outside workforce to come into the Virgin Islands and not only invest, but to work. And I started on hospitality, and it's an important one because it's a unique situation. When I say that, all across the region, we have hospitality businesses, but in the Virgin Islands, it seems immensely hard to find locals who are interested in taking up these roles, and that could be blamed on a number of reasons. But when you do now go outside of the shores and try to bring persons in to contribute to your business and to put back into the economy, the process is excruciating, and in many cases, then sometimes a labor request, a work permit takes a year and over. So when you speak on immigration and labor matters, that's one thing that's very similar to us. We have not been able to find a middle ground. We have not been able to find a avenue to speed up the process, to make it not only smoother for the candidates themselves or the employers when it comes to labor and immigration. And I'm not sure why that is, but I can tell you undeniably it's annoying, it's frustrating for business owners, especially coming out of the hurricanes of 2017 and then COVID. You think you get an opportunity to be able to get your business back on its floor, but you don't have the avenue to hire people, not only locally, but when you go outside the shores, the process is just absolutely excruciating. I know our colleague Shayna is on, our chairman of the
Chamber of Commerce, yeah.
Chamber. So I'm not sure if she would have some insight as to first of all how we got to this point and how we could get out of it from a business perspective, because it is excruciating.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Well, definitely what what Damian and Dwayne spoke about are echoes, I would say, and a lot of it is not having or taking action on your immigration and your labor policies early enough. And one of the things, to relate to what Damian is talking about, is that when we start to look at workforce development, so what we've decided now from our Chambers of Commerce standpoint is to start to advocate for the development of the local workforce to take up the roles so that businesses now have another option. Because, sometimes persons feel that we're just intent on importing labor. But as you guys are explaining, these things have long-standing social implications that are now coming home to roost. So you imagine persons coming in and suing for rights that, persons who have grown up in the territory all their lives and been contributing are going to feel offended. And those things are going to cause a lot of social dishevel, as it were, because persons see oftentimes imported labor as taking the jobs away from locals. And these, it sets up some very high social tension. So I know, Ron, I think the last thing I heard was that they were going to try to improve the work permit processing system that was initiated last year, that was taken offline. And hopefully, I think the digitization of the government services is always one of those things that helps with efficiency. But again, it's to make sure that we do the right things in the right way so that, persons have an easier time, both for the employers as well as the employees. But Damian, that's a very interesting case I have to keep an eye on.
Listen, the problem comes in the fact that immigration, and I'm sure Dwayne said it, about Bermuda. Immigration is such a political football and this issue is liable to sink this government, right? Despite whatever they do, this issue is liable to sink this government. Some of these persons have been waiting nearly 7 years. They applied 7 years ago. That's how bad the situation is. Every time there's a commission formed, members of the commission resign because it's such a political football. So we finally had a commission that agreed, okay, we're going to review these applications that's so hotly contested, and they review it and only approve 19, and now the persons who are rejected are like, you know what, I've been waiting 7 years, I've paid thousands of dollars, and you're telling me I can't stay? That's a problem, right? And so we have to find a way around this. Like I've literally said to people, as a country, we have to decide, do we want people to come in or not? Because no country grows on its own. I mean, in all reality, our economy is growing faster than we can supply the labor market. So immigration is a must, right? We can ignore that fact. The other issue then becomes one of cultural survival, right? Because persons start to feel from a cultural and social perspective that their culture is being, kind of pushed aside or dying out or whatever. But then a lot of times people don't realize that comes down to certain principles in population dynamics, right? There's one principle I don't remember off the top of my head that says that if the birth rate of a country isn't above a certain rate, what happens is then the culture automatically starts to die out. And any country that has fallen below that rate has never recovered, right? No society has ever recovered. And so this is why a lot of developed countries have huge welfare systems. It's to incentivize the birth rate to maintain their culture. We think it's just to give you benefits, but there's actually a scientific reasoning behind it. And I think Caribbean countries have started realizing that you have to be intentional about assimilation. It's not going to happen by accident. There are very good social science principles behind assimilation programs, behind social benefit programs that governments can justify spending money to be intentional, because there are only two ways. You're going to either have to grow the population naturally, young people start having children, or you're going to have people come in and assimilate into your society, and that's not going to be accidental. You have to be intentional about it.
Yep, definitely. So we had a question real quick. I just want to answer because I don't know where the hour went. Gary was asking if we have valid data. So Gary, I am happy to report I heard the director of the Central Statistics Office here in the Virgin Islands on the radio today saying they are going to start the 2020 census in June 2023. So we will soon have updated data on employment and other things. But in the meantime, I think you can find some information on the CSO website. Don't know the address offhand, but you can Google it or visit the bvi.gov.bg government's website and find that information there in terms of employment versus unemployment. Because again, Damian, like you're saying, it's always going to be that challenge of balancing and having to tackle these things from a multifaceted standpoint as it relates to, but understanding that islanders will have preference over imported, and that again is where the tensions, they start to rise. Because we have, as part of the COI, because when you said that, no, I thought about the fact that as part of the COI, there were a batch, a couple hundred of belonging statuses that were given out in 2019 that are supposed to be reviewed. And you could imagine now if those are reviewed and it come back that, the process wasn't followed or some other issue is found, that is going to be a major issue on our hands.
Well, one of the problems in TCI is that some members of our status commission have actually made what you could consider biased comments in the media, right? And essentially the argument of these persons suing the government is that the commission is biased. And so members of the commission have come out and spoken out about it and literally made biased comments. And I'm like, you're making these people's argument for them. Like, you're giving them the case.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't realize you're actually sinking the government. Like,
that should be an objective and unbiased process that's followed.
It should. Clearly, it wasn't for some members.
Wow. Yeah,
that's
interesting.
And I tell people, unfortunately, the law does not care about our feeling. It's not about how we feel, but it's about whether or not the process was followed. And that's all the law cares about.
Yeah. All right, so Chris, we got a few more.
Shayna, I don't know.
Go ahead, Ron.
I don't know if you guys, Shayna, I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to touch on this, but just FYI, it is an election year in the British Virgin Islands. We are gearing up to head to the polls pretty soon, suspected. So you guys can look out for that as well. Of course, coming into an election, having come out of the COI and the arrest of the former premier, you could expect that a lot's on the table, a lot is at stake. So definitely that's something we encourage the region to pay attention to. Our order in council is still hanging over our heads in regards to coming out of the COI and its implementation. Our representative for overseas territories, the Right Honorable Goldsmith, was in the territory. More of a courtesy visit. Very little of negotiations took place. Our premier recently came back from UK, but specific to the order in council, it is very much still present. And Lord Goldsmith himself has informed that it's really going to be reliant on the COI implementation. So we have a lot going on in the territory. So you guys can stay tuned for that. And of course, we'll make sure to keep you posted.
So question for you, Ron. You all currently have a national unity government, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how is
Yes,
that going to work?
Well, Chris, amazing question. And the truth be told, I guess at the end of the day, in the final analysis, when you have to do what you have to do, it has to be done. And when we look back at the events of the past few months, the creation of the national unity government was essentially that in the heat of crisis, I would say, and in an attempt to do its best to save the country, you had leaders seemingly come together. But I can guarantee you that the national unity government will be dismantled once election is called, and the reason for that is because you have the premier of the country who just actually retained the chairmanship of the Virgin Islands Party, for which he's a part of, say that the mandate was served, it was created for a purpose, but we have it from here, meaning the Virgin Islands Party from which he is a part of. So we will not see, unless something drastically changes, which will not happen. Persons are going back to their individual parties in order to have a bid at public office.
Well, here's the funny thing, right? You have presence from 3 different parties as part of the national unity government, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until the election is not so much when the election is called, but until the election is over, that is still the sitting government, right? So
Yeah,
they still have to
Correct.
sit.
Yes.
They still have to sit in cabinet, right? They still have to sit in parliament. Well, you not they don't sit in parliament. The parliament will be
Dissolved.
dismissed, right?
House of
But
Assembly.
they still have to sit in cabinet together every week, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
how we're sitting in cabinet every week and we're campaigning against each other like this is
Once that bell rings,
It is going to be.
You remember that? You remember that? You remember that story of Jesus and his disciples and just sitting and drinking wine at the table, and we all know what happened after that. So we definitely have some. And you're right,
Mhm.
but it's left to be seen whether or not that election process up until that point is a short one or a lengthy one. It more than likely will be a short one, but you're absolutely right.
okay.
this is going to be interesting.
It will be, because especially
Maybe
the
that-
fact that this is something new for our community, and in terms of how it works. Because I
Mhm.
remember one question that keeps coming to me is about, how come we haven't seen any campaigning yet? And I was like, guys, remember we have a coalition. It's gonna be hard to be out there bashing each other at night and then go to work the next day and still try to maintain some type of cohesion. I say, but so the time will come for it. But all of these it's changed the dynamics of what people are would have been expecting to see. So close to what the election would have been, because it has to happen by May 12th, based on the Constitution timeline. So the expectation would have been to see more activity or more sound bites out there on the campaign trail. So there's gonna be, but I think as Ron said, once it starts, it's gonna be quick.
Yes.
I think Damian, you should book a ticket to come over to cover that election That it's a once in a lifetime type of
Definitely should.
That
event.
Definitely should, brother.
that is a very interesting idea. I think I should, because I would love to see how this is going to work out after you've had three parties sitting in coalition for so long, and now you have to go and campaign. And I know we have a tendency to sling a little mud in our elections, you know, and you would have gotten to know your cabinet partners pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 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 and formed alliances as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see where the chips fall.
Yeah.
You know, who's going to take whose side, who's going to, you know, be more opposed to which individual or which party. I mean, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
And what will be more interesting is how will the population respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to see. Interested
Well, one
in
of the
how
things,
the islanders respond.
Damien, that's very interesting in this entire process. At the end of the day, in the final analysis, candidates outside of the party are elected, and if your party, for example, falls short, truth be told, there is going to be a number of negotiations. There's going to be a number of crossing of the floor again, because at the end of the day, you need a government and a specific number to form the government. So realistically, persons like to talk about coalition. They like to talk about independent candidates. But in the final analysis, candidates will have to make a choice as to where they choose or who they choose to support when it comes to a party. So we talk a lot about wanting to do away with party politics, but it's far from over.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a show dedicated just to the upcoming BVI elections, because a lot of people outside of BVI don't know the dynamics, how many seats, which parties, personalities, what are the platforms. So that's something we could look to cover coming up.
Yeah.
The thing, no, I was going to say the thing about it is that you know, once a government is formed, it's going to be interesting to see what comes after that. Especially given the pressures of the COI and what the UK government may be asking. You know, I want to see how politicians respond, because our politicians basically responded by saying to our population, it's not us, it's the British. You know, that was kind of our response. It's not us, it's the British. And, you know, a lot of times we could, there are instances where we could change things, or our politicians could change things, but the British has become a convenient scapegoat.
Mm. All right. Anything else, Brother Ron?
That is it for me. We have an unfortunate rise in crime. Gun violence has essentially skyrocketed. Of course, when we compare it to a lot of our counterparts across the region, it's not as bad. But the Virgin Islands community has, for a long time, regained a relatively safe environment, and that is not the same. The war on drugs is pretty much a battle, and we're losing a lot of our young men to that. So that's something that we continue to grapple with, and unfortunately, it continues to increase.
Right. Anything else, Brother Damian? Thank you, Brother Ron. Anything else, Brother Damian, as we get ready to wrap up?
I mean, there's a lot going on in TCI right now. This government is basically, in my opinion, kind of fighting a lot of issues that could sink it politically, as it's one of the big issues that emerged this week is the closing of our tourist board. The government wants to open a destination marketing organization, a DMO, and it's supposed to be a PPP, a public-private partnership, and many persons see it as privatization of tourism, because PPP hasn't worked out well for us. It's essentially turned out to be the private sector telling the government what to do, and so tourist board employees were given their walking papers this week. You know, and so the minister has had to put out several statements, sometimes within the same day, to defend the government's position. So it's really interesting. I mean, they're really under fire on this issue, especially given the whole status situation now, where these persons are suing the government because of the status commission decision and the labor force situation, and that's all compounded by illegal immigration. So there's a lot of issues stacking up in Turks and Caicos, but also like BVI, there is the issue playing out in the background of crime, and so it's just a number of things that we're grappling with at the moment.
Okay. And you, Sister Shayna Smith Archer?
Well, despite all of our the different stories we went through tonight, we're still hopeful. At the beginning of a new year, I think, as we've been discussing over the last year and a half of doing this show, that we as a Caribbean people have, all that is within us to solve these problems once we have the courage. And that's one of the things I really hope and pray this year comes to the forefront in any election. I don't know when your next election is in TCI, Damian, but we need courageous leaders in this dispensation, because we have battles at home and battles abroad that we are having to contend with, and we have to make sure we're coming with our A game and doing what's best for not just now, but out in the future. So we're gonna stay hopeful, Chris, and eat a lot of tart.
We're doing 2025.
In 2025, okay, so you still have some time, unless an early one is called, eh?
The way things are going, you never know.
Yeah. Next week, matter of fact, in the Bahamas, all the heads of the CARICOM will be actually meeting in the Bahamas to discuss regional issues. And one of the things I can say, I can put my hand on my heart, is that the overseas territories over the last 5 years, 3 to 5 years, have worked closer together, especially when it comes to defending each other's rights, when it comes to things that the British have been trying to force on us. So what I hope to see, or what I know is going to happen over this slow course of time, there's a wider region, and then there's us in the overseas territories who are bound, not just simply because we're still colonies of the United Kingdom, but we have the same, I guess you'd say, small island challenges that bigger islands don't have. Jamaica's not worrying about an immigration issue. Turks and Caicos is, Bermuda is, so on and so forth. So although we are one region, there are nuances in each island. But I'm happy that we're back after a well-deserved break.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to more shows. Once again, I want to thank our media partners, ZJB Radio in Montserrat, PJFE in Saba, CBN in both the Virgin Islands, Cayman Marl in Cayman Islands, Channel 82 in Bermuda, CBC in Barbados.
I'm keeping away the station, Chris.
So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for all that you all are doing in your individual islands, because you are keeping the people informed, because you are the fourth estate that hold the government accountable, right?
As I said, don't forget Radio Turks and Caicos in the Turks and Caicos Islands, Chris.
Beg pardon?
Don't forget Radio Turks in the Turks and Caicos Islands.
I wanted you to say it. You said it 3 times, see? It worked.
Yeah.
Radio Turks and Caicos, Mr. Chris Gerard and Mr. Damian Wilson. Chris Jarrett, sorry, my apologies. I'm suffering with the flu tonight. But like I said, you all are holding the government accountable in your individual island. And that's what the people want to see, because generally governments just tell people what the governments want them to hear. The journalists, the media tell people what they need to hear. So once again, thank you, gentlemen, and we look forward to more regional roundups.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Well, thank you all. It's a pleasure to see you.
Yes. Love you all in the region. Thank you all for your support over the years.